Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. But hold the Alana and bring in Brooke. So today we are here with Brooke Carlock. She is the author of Grief Sucks, But Your Life Doesn't Have to, host of the Morning Coffee podcast, and a YouTube creator best known for honest, no BS conversations about grief and loss, which is why she is the most perfect fit for us. Hello, Brooke.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Oh my gosh. How are
Thanks.
you? You were just sharing that you are snowed in.
We are snowed in, and I was saying I'm a teacher, so we've had 2 snow days now. I'm waiting to see what happens tomorrow, but
You
we had
know,
about 10 inches, so
so I'm up in Canada, and where I live, we don't get as much snow
yeah.
as where you are, but where I used to live, Winnipeg, Manitoba, like above North Dakota, in the 90s, we would get these snowfalls where like school sometimes was canceled and their snow would be like as high as the cars. And I just remember as a little kid loving snow days.
Yes. I have always loved snow days, but I love them even more as a teacher.
I could imagine. I love that. So we're here to talk about resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like
I love the title of the podcast, by the way. That's perfect.
thank you.
Yeah.
It looks like you and I have something in common, which is complex compound grief. You
Right.
shared with us that your dad, stepmom, mom, daughter all died within 18 months
Right.
of each other, essentially forcing you to live while grief piled up faster than you can process it. And first of all, I am so fucking sorry. That is like
Thank you.
mom, dad, stepmom, and your daughter. Like that's
Y-
a lot of shit, even individually. So
Yeah.
before we go on, I would love to learn their names
Of course.
and maybe
Um,
give us a little bit, like tell us a little bit about your dad, your stepmom, your mom, and your daughter.
Yeah, I will happily tell you about all of them. I do like to kind of start a little bit earlier just so you get a better sense of where I was at when that happened. I was not a stranger to grief. I had experienced some unusual losses. I was one of those kids where, like in elementary school, all of my grandparents had already passed away. So I was one of the few kids that didn't seem to have any grandparents left. And I always thought that was kind of strange. And then when I was in my early 20s, my sister passed away. Her name was Shannon. And that was a totally freak thing. She actually died of pneumonia in her sleep. Went to bed one night and didn't wake up the next morning. And she was only 32 years old, had 2 little kids. So that was really my first kind of shocking grief experience. Um, so yeah, I had to deal with that. And then a few years later, I was in my 30s, and my sister-in-law, Heather, also passed away when she was 32. So it was like, what the heck? And I lost a cousin in her early 30s. And I'm like, man, this is like, I thought it was weird that all these people around me that I loved were dying so young. And it was really freaking depressing. Um, so I had a little bit of a background, but nothing really prepares you for what I experienced in 2021 and 2022. So first, I lost my dad in November of 2021. His name was Tom. That was totally unexpected. He died of a heart attack when he was driving home from work, pulled over on the side of the road and died in his car. Um, so I got a call from my stepmom in the middle of the night that we had lost him. And that was just a complete shock because, again, nothing was wrong. Like, he wasn't like sick or anything. He had actually gotten through prostate cancer and was like healthy again. So we thought everything was good. And then it was just like, boom, he was gone. And he was like a big dude, 6'5", weighed like probably 300 pounds, just a very large presence. So a big light went out when I lost him. And I was always kind of a daddy's girl, always trying to people please for him and make him proud. So that was a big loss. And then my stepmom was not really a fan of my stepmom, honestly. My dad had left my mom for her, and she was a lot younger, just a few years older than my sister was actually. And she had a lot of problems and was an alcoholic. And then she actually, on the day of my dad's funeral, she overdosed on pills and alcohol and ended up passing away. So here I was at my dad's funeral, like waiting for my stepmom to show up to say hello, you know, welcome all of their friends and stuff. And here she doesn't show up and doesn't show up. And then her brother calls the funeral home and said that he found her, you know, at their house. And they had taken her to the hospital and then she passed away. So yeah, so I was then left at the funeral to tell everyone what had happened to my stepmom. So that was kind of crazy. So that was a lot, going through those two things right in a row and planning those funerals and dealing with all that and all of the estate stuff that you never realize, like how much bullshit is involved in that. And my dad hadn't left a will, and it was just a mess. So I'm in the midst of dealing with that. That was in November. And then that December, a month later, my mom got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So that was just another like, oh, okay, great, more to deal with. So that involved a lot of, you know, doctor visits, hospital visits, chemotherapy, all that stuff. So, you know, in December, I start helping out with her doing that stuff. And then February of 2022, so just 4 months after I lost my dad and my stepmom, that was when I got the call that no parent ever wants to get ever, that my two kids had been in a car accident. My older son, Max, 18, was driving the car, had picked my daughter, Libby, up. She was 10, from her dance class. They were driving to their dad's house on a Wednesday night because that was one of his visitation nights. And my son had a problem with his car, had called my ex-husband to say, like, what do I do? My engine light came on, and he was paying attention to what was happening with the car and talking to his dad, and went through a stop sign, and their car was hit by one of those big car carrier trucks on Libby's side of the car. And Libby died right away. And Max had injuries, but he survived. They took him to the hospital. So yeah, that was by far, I mean, it was one of those things. I was grieving for my dad and, you know, my stepmom in a weird way. And I was worried about my own mom. But as soon as I lost my daughter, like the rest of all my other worries just were completely paling in comparison to what I've never felt anything. And I can't imagine I will feel anything ever again that was like what that felt like to get that phone call. Yeah, so that was Libby. And then eventually, so that was within 4 months that all of that happened. And
oh my gosh, 4 months.
4 months that all of that happened. And then my mom survived for another 14 months and passed away then after that. So that was hard because I was dealing with losing Libby, but then also my mom was dying of cancer while I was grieving my daughter, and I'm like trying to take care of her, but also trying to like survive myself, you know? So yeah, it was just that whole time period is just a blur of survival, pretty much. Like, how in the hell am I going to get through this stuff?
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so that's the story of how everything happened. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or tell you what came next or anything.
I am so sorry. That is a lot.
Yeah.
That is heartbreaking.
Thank you.
Especially, you know, Libby and Max and that you know, I can't imagine how you felt, and you know, that isn't the right like order of things to happen.
No, definitely not.
Especially, you know, her being a kid.
Yeah.
And the fact that you had to deal with your stepmom's overdose on the day of your dad's funeral is just, that's a lot to handle, especially while burying your father.
Right.
And I'm sorry, like that on its own takes away from you being able to be there and be present to honor the grief of your dad. So that's really terrible. And I'm sorry. And the fact that your mom had cancer, and you learned right after.
Yeah.
And you being the caregiver,
like,
and you being her caregiver while also having kids, and then losing Libby. And I'm sure Max needed some support. Plus, you probably I mean, you said you were in the States. Like, did you have to work through all of this? And you're a
Uh,
teacher.
yes, I'm a teacher. When I lost my dad and my stepmom, I got 2 days off for each of them. And that was it. So I thought that was insane at the time. Because at that time, it felt like my world was crumbling. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen. So just at that point, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like 2 days and yeah, my brother and I were in charge of the estate. And thank goodness I had him because he helped me, with things. And same with my mom. But that was a lot. Yeah, it was it was a
It
lot.
is
And
a lot.
then
It's a lot.
when I lost Libby, um I was lucky enough they have a sick bank at my work. So when you get hired there, you can donate some of your sick days. And then if you have an illness or something, something like tragic, like I went through, you can use sick bank days. And I was able to take off a month after she died, and it still wasn't enough. I still don't think after you lose a child, I don't think 30 days is anywhere near enough to be able to take off of work, especially when your job is basically standing in front of people all day, trying to keep a brave face and, actually seem like a functioning human. So, yeah, it was not enough time, but luckily my staff, was great. My friends at work were great, and I made it through. I went back in, I guess it would have been the end of March, and I had to make
Mm,
it until June. So again, it's a blur. Like I look back and I'm like,
yeah.
how did I do that? How?
Well, that was my
it,
next question because I went through like in a very short period of time. My learned my dad was gonna die. My husband almost died. My grandfather died. We had a car accident. I got a brain injury.
Hmm.
We struggled with fertility, got pregnant, miscarried. Father-in-law died a couple weeks later. My mom died a couple months later. My dad died the same year. So compound grief.
Yes.
And I felt like my brain broke. Like and I even think back, like I don't remember chunks of time. And
Yeah.
during that time, my brain broke. Like I'm self-employed and I was working on projects, but it's like my part of my brain just like forgot I was doing things. And months later, it's like I had these moments of waking up where I was like, oh my God, what was happening with that? And it's like, oh, I disappeared.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
I
people who've been through grief have empathy and compassion and get it.
Yeah.
Those who haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg, they're sometimes is understanding, but they don't get it.
Yeah.
And you were obviously, it sounds like you were in survival mode, but like, how did you get through?
Um, Phew. So when I lost Libby, um, I ended up probably 3 weeks after she died. I at first, if you've lost someone close to you, you kind of know how it is, especially if you're in charge of things. Like I wanted to control everything about her memorial service. So it was like, dealing with all the stuff with the accident, dealing with Max. Max actually had a head injury, and it was weird. I kind of love telling this story, but weirdly, it helped me survive like those first couple days after I lost Libby, just because it was so freaking bizarre. If you've ever seen the movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, there's
Hmm.
a character called 10 Second Tom where like you talk to him and then 10 seconds later he forgets everything you just said.
Yeah.
My son had that, except he was on a 30-second delay. So the accident caused something in his brain where every 30 seconds he forgot everything you had just said to him the previous 30 seconds and like started over. So it was horrible at first because he's in the hospital and every 30 seconds he's asking, why am I here? What's happening? Where's Libby? And then we kept trying to like explain to him what happened. And then after a while, because he'd keep forgetting and we'd have to keep saying, like, your sister didn't make it. And it was taking a toll on all of us. So after a while, we're just like, don't worry about it. You're going to forget in 30 seconds anyway. Like, we'll tell you once your memory comes back. And it was just the most bizarre thing. And I couldn't believe it because they actually sent him home from the hospital like that. Because physically, other than cuts and bruises and stuff, he was fine, except for this 30-second thing. And they said eventually he would just kind of snap out of it. And he did. But man, the hours that it took for that to happen were very, very strange. My ex-husband David and I, Libby's dad, we focused really heavily on Max and getting him help that he needed. We got him hooked up with a trauma counselor right away. So I was, driving him back and forth to the trauma counselor. I was planning Libby's memorial. I wrote every single word of that thing. I made, video compilations of her. She was a competitive dancer. So, I made all these videos of compilations of her dancing. And I just kept myself busy. Like it was just, if I'm busy, I'm not thinking. After about 3 weeks, when everything was done and I didn't have much to think about anymore, that was when it sunk and got dark. I ended up checking into a day program at a mental health hospital that was near my house. And that was extremely helpful because it just gave me basic tools to get me through the day. And I was really angry because I had to go back to work because I couldn't take any more. I was the main breadwinner in the house at the time. And I still had a mortgage to pay and I still had 2 grown boys to feed. And so it was frustrating that I had to go back to work and I had to leave that program early, which made me kind of angry. But they did give me a lot of skills just to function. Lots of stuff I'm sure lots of breathing exercises, lots of, I did the gratitude journal. I did the, find 5 things that you see and 4 things you can touch and that kind of stuff, the sensory things, which all when you're in the depths of stuff like that can be very helpful to go back to basics like that. So that's kind of what helped. And then when I had to go back to work, it was just one of those things where I just kind of had to do it. So I didn't really have much of a choice. And there's something about being in front of 8th graders all day long. Like you can't, they were wonderful, but they don't get it either. I mean, I went back and the first day that I went back, one of my sweetest girl, but she was like, I know how you feel. I lost my cat this year too. And I'm just like, it's exactly the same. Just thanks.
Yeah. Okay, Brooke. I just want to jump in here. Like, first of all, kudos for acknowledging that you needed a day program and to check in, because I think one of the hardest things for us humans to admit is, one, that we need help, but also that we can't do it ourselves.
Exactly.
And you don't have to wait to have complex grief or compound grief to get that help.
Yep.
And I think that's amazing that you made that decision to do that. And it's, it's funny because I actually sometimes reflect in I journal every day and I'm like, should I have maybe gone into like a treatment center? Like probably, but I didn't. It was like the height of COVID. And nothing was, but when someone tells me, and I know a few people, especially in the grief space, who write or have a podcast or are therapists who have put themselves into programs. And I think that's very admirable. So I'm proud of you for that. And I also want to talk about, like, you wrote a book, Grief Sucks, but Your Life Doesn't Have to. And I don't know, I mean, being a teacher is one thing, and having a life full of grief and leading up to that 18 months of hell. Did you have a normal writing practice, or how did you integrate writing into your healing, and how did this book become a book?
Yeah, I had always been a writer. Writing was always kind of my thing. People never think so because I do podcasts and speak and things like that, but I am very introverted actually. So writing is like my jam. I'd much rather write someone an email than talk on the phone. And the book actually came about because so many people after Libby died were asking me how I was doing all the time, which is amazing. Like, it's wonderful to have a support system, but you can only tell so many people, especially when a lot of it is like, you kind of, it's surface conversations, so it was one of those things where I'm like, do you really want to know? Like, do you really want to know how I actually am? Or do you want the like, I'll be
Oh, when people
okay.
would
Thanks
ask
for
me,
asking.
I'd be like, "Oh, I'm actually absolutely terrible and
Yeah,
miserable." And they'd
yeah.
be like, "Oh," I'm like, "You asked."
Terrible. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So,
Sad.
um, I started a blog as a way that I could
Mm.
say to people, like, I don't really feel like going into it right now, but if you go here, you can read this online blog. And in the blog, I just wrote entries that were just brutally honest, like rip
Mm.
your heart out honest about what I was going through and how much I miss Libby and how nothing was ever going to be the same. And um, yeah, I just put it all out there. And the book ended up coming about because a lot of people started reading the blog and, grieving parents found it from all over the world. And I just kept hearing the same thing, like, thank you so much for being honest, like, and not sugarcoating anything. And then someone asked me, like, did you ever think about making videos, like YouTube videos? And I hadn't, but I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So then I started making YouTube videos, and at first they were awful, god awful. But eventually they got better. And then that turned into just the amount of people saying that I was helping them
Hmm.
was a healing thing for me. It was like, okay, I felt like I was doing something good with all the shit that I had been given. Um, and I'm like, all right, this is good. Maybe I can do this. And so I did David Kessler's like grief certification course. Um, I worked with Lucy Hone, who's another, amazing grief person. And yeah, basically got trained to help people with their grief. And then I was like, maybe I'll write a book too. So I kind of took the book was kind of a compilation of all the different things that I learned writing the blog. And
Mm.
then the things that I had learned kind of along the way in my studies, basically just the things that had helped me. So it was one of those things where it was like, I want to write something that I wish I would have had. My biggest issue, if I'm being honest, I am not religious. So many of the books that I found were very like religious or spiritual, and I'm not that. So I wanted to write something for people who maybe were having the same struggle of just finding like secular grief support. And it's not that like not that I'm against that at all. Like whatever helps you, but that doesn't help me. So my book doesn't have that. It sounds like I am. There's lots of swearing. there there are jokes, like there's no sugarcoating. It's just very kind of blunt and brutally honest, but it's like this is what helped me and maybe it will help you too. So that's kind of how
Mhm.
that came about.
Well, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing all of
Yeah, of
that.
course.
I know, like, when I teach, like, I have something called the Navigating Grief Framework. And
Yeah.
part of that is about writing and telling your story, whether it's to a journal that no one's going to see or being on a podcast or anything in
Yep.
between. But it's part of how we process.
Yes.
And also, like, our stories can help so many other people. And I think it's amazing that you do this because you also have a job
I
and you
do.
always like the podcast and and the book and for you being this light in the darkness, I think is very
Thank you.
admirable work. As we're kind of winding down, if people want to buy your book or learn more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, if you want to buy my book, you can. The easiest way is Amazon. You can get it at local booksellers, but you'll probably have to request that they get that in. Um, but Amazon's easy. Or you could go on my website, which is brookecarlock.org, which also has links to my YouTube channel. That's really where I would say I'm the most active is on YouTube. I have like hundreds of videos at this point on every kind of grief topic you could possibly imagine. And then the Morning Coffee podcast is interviews just like this.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it's my ex-husband where he and I talk about, Libby and what we're going through. Most times it's interviews with other either grieving people or, experts in the grief field. I'm looking forward to having you on there.
I'm
um,
excited.
yeah, so that's where you can find me. I would say brookecarlock.org. It will kind of link you to whatever you need to find.
Yes, amazing. And it's all in the show notes. We always wrap up and with a piece of advice, and you've been through a lot, but I think let's focus on if someone is listening to this and they're nodding along like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And I can relate because in that short period of time, I lost this person and this person and this person. And now that you're in this place of your healing and you have your book and you have all these YouTube videos and what you've learned about grief, and it's a lifelong journey. Like we are going to continuously be learning, continuously be inspiring. And what I want to know is, what advice do you have for someone who is realizing that, oh my God, I'm experiencing this grief that's piling up, loss after loss, and I can't process loss A before B happens, before C happens. Like, what is your advice?
My advice, if that is your situation, is please don't feel guilty about it, because that dealing with the different losses that you've had will come with time. Like I was saying with my dad, I only had a short chance to grieve him before I lost Libby. And once I lost Libby, it was like nothing else mattered at that point. But 2 years after losing Libby, I used to feel terrible. Like I barely even think about my dad. And then I lost my mom, and it was like, obviously I was devastated that I lost my mom, but because I had lost my daughter and that was kind of all consuming, I felt guilty that I wasn't grieving my mom as much as I should. At the point where I'm at now, it's like 4 years later, I definitely feel myself feeling the loss of my parents more. I feel like I've done the work with Libby. I have learned to walk along with that grief. I know it's not going away, and I do lots of things to honor her. I've got an organization called livelike.libby.org, and we provide scholarships for dancers, for her. I carry around, this is her ashes we had made into stones, and I have her stone that anytime I do something, different or cool, I have her with me. And I'm starting to do that with my parents now. I just made a playlist with all of the songs that my dad and I used to listen to when we were little. And Christmas, I broke out my mom's chocolate chip cookie recipe and made her cookies. So it will come. So don't feel guilty if you don't feel like you're giving certain people the time that they deserve. You just have to figure out how to grieve them in your own time, in your own way.
That's beautiful advice. Thank you so much, Brooke.
Of course.
Thank you for sharing a very small part of your journey that is a very big part of your journey.
You are so welcome.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode of Resilient AF. It is okay to not be okay. You will get through it. You are not alone. Let us be that lighthouse in the storm. And just remember, you are Resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are Resilient AF.